for taking the time from all this hectic schedule and all these things that are going on in this country to join us this morning. Just to formally say, I'm Barbara Segaloff, and I'm the Development Director for the Patrons of the New Haven Public Library. And the Patrons is the fundraising side for the libraries. So what we don't get from, we try to supplement what is not raised or provided to us through the city budget. And it was about a year ago that Jim Wellborn, who's a city librarian, came up with this idea that the patrons wanted to look into doing something different than Mardi Gras, which is our one major event that we have every year. And we thought about doing an author event, and thus became Breach of Peace. And we are very excited about being able to launch this initiative with such a timely topic with what's going on in this country. And I'm just pleased that we can start this out in a very exciting way. And to have been able to collaborate with Atlas Publishing, who was part of this book, Breach of Peace, and have the luxury of having Heidi Hamilton, who resides in this community, who is working with Atlas on, and working with the library and the patrons on this effort. And so we're pleased to have Heidi here with us. And the treasure for all of us is that we learned about Lula White, who is a freedom rider and lives here in New Haven. And so I think it just enhances our launch even more so, and to have somebody who is here that can share her experience with the community and talk about stories and things that I think there are just so many people that don't know enough about, and to be able to do that is very exciting to us. And so I'm going to turn over a good part of this meeting to Heidi and to Lula. I just again want to say thank you very much. The Patrons is having an event before the public program. They're going to have a private fundraising luncheon on the same day, October 29th. And the author and 2 other freedom riders will be part of that program, and Professor Jonathan Holloway, who is at Yale, and he is in the African American Studies and History program, will be facilitating that discussion. And here at the public program that night, and you have that information in your press release, will be a woman by the name of Shella Greenberg, who is from Trinity College, who's also a professor of history and has done a lot of work on the civil rights movement. Will be here facilitating that discussion for the evening. So we're very excited that the library is going to be part of this initiative, that Lula will be part of that. And what I'd like Heidi to share with you is how we are getting the community engaged in this initiative, and to talk more a little bit about the book itself. And then open it up for Lula to talk and share about her experiences to the press. And again, thank you very much for coming.
I'm out this morning and to let you know how excited I am to be a part of the library's initiative. So the concept of Breach of Peace is a notion that individuals on their own initiative made some pretty amazing decisions about their life, that they were going to step outside of the comfort zone of where they lived and go to what at that time many people thought of as a foreign land, to go into the South and to challenge the Supreme Court's, to challenge the segregation laws that existed at the time. So the Supreme Court had already passed and ruled on the decisions that forced the integration of the public bus system, but a little minor problem was that the lunch counters were still segregated and the toilets were still segregated. So the Freedom Riders went down to challenge that. Eric Etheridge just stumbled upon a treasure trove of photographs. He took those photographs, or over 300 Freedom Riders, and he put them into the book Breach of Peace. So when you open the cover of the book, which is most people forget about, is actually one of the most amazing parts of the book. Oh, this one's all covered up and it's all nice. Let's take a different. Links Foundation. There will be 2 copies of Breach of Peace in every public library in New Haven, and that will be as soon as Wednesday. So inside the book is the 300 Freedom Riders. And if you need any PDFs of the book, we can get that for you. And then what he did is he went around the country and he found the living Freedom Riders. And with this, he began to interview them. And so now we see the series of interviews. And then he took a black and white picture of the current Freedom Riders and juxtaposed that with their mugshots, which were wonderfully preserved by a commission that really kept track of all of the information that took place at Parchment. So when he then interviewed and then found out their backgrounds and information and where they came from and what they were doing, Atlas & Co. and then decided, well, we really need to get this book out and do some sort of creative marketing with it. It's not enough to publish the book and just sort of put it out into the world and see what happens. And so that's how I came to the library. I live in Hampton and have been here about 13 years, have children in the school system. And so it was through that we decided to do these projects with the library. So in your package is what we put together called the sort of Civic Engagement Committee. And the idea was to bring together community members such as the New Haven Housing Authority. And Karen, thank you so much for coming here today as from the Housing Authority. On this list, and we have an Excel spreadsheet, and you can see in your packet how it started, which was just a letter that we sent out to the members of the New Haven community, organizations such as the Community Foundation, the United Way. We have as a partner the public school system is engaged, Amistad is engaged, youth organizations, LEAP, Youth Rights Media, to bring sort of all these groups together that are constantly doing programming and see if we can, similar to Arts and Ideas, because Arts and Ideas is part of this group as well, to begin to think of civic engagement not just as a concept that you read about, but something you might do. And to encourage each of these organizations to come up with an action, some sort of activity. Matos, Kika Matos is part of the group as well. Pamela from the African American, Pamela George from the African American, Charlie Pillsbury. So, and you'll see it. So you'll see the letter, and then after you get past the letter, what the committee list looks like and who was involved. So our first meeting was earlier last month. And the first idea was to come and first introduce the book, introduce the concepts, the ideas, and then to begin to spark some ideas. So I'll give you just an example of some ideas. So one idea we're thinking about is a film series, right? That would be spearheaded possibly by the library. We would bring some films and end up in different venues in New Haven. The Criterion might get involved. These are just thoughts and ideas. There's a website called Insert Here. And with this website, what this concept is that you look around your community and they post a sign that says insert here. And community members can come up with ideas. What would they like to see here? What would they like to see different? How could it be improved? And then designers take that concept and put together a full-fledged design that would reflect someone's vision. But the idea actually is not for the library to come up with ideas, it's for the community organizations to come up with the ideas. What the library will do is facilitate meetings, keep notes, keep everybody informed, work together in spearheading marketing and getting advertisement out about the event. But the idea is that it will be coordinated. And what we're secretly hoping, with Andrea showing up from Arts and Ideas, that they'll see something that they like. And we'll be able to take the things that we've been doing since October and perhaps, if we're lucky, see something in the summertime. So that's kind of the concept. Barbara also is Verdivic, which is behind us, and that's opening at the library and is also going to be at some other branches. We're working on that concept as well. So the idea is to get people to think about what you might do as an individual to make a difference. And that brings us, of course, to Lula. And as Tom says, put it out in the universe and all kinds of things happen. And we did that, and through the association, which is, Joan, it's the Labor, what's the name of the association, though?
Neighborhood Labor History Association.
Okay, so through the Neighborhood Labor History Association, we had invited Joan, and she said, well, Lula's right here. And we were so excited that here was our connection. We knew it was out there someplace, but by being open and engaging within the community, we came upon Lula. So we had her, invited her here this morning. She's going to be at all of the other 2 events, at the luncheon. She'll also be at the public event at the library. And so, Lula, I turn it over to you for a couple of comments, and then we can take some questions.
Well, I'm very excited to hear about all of this. As a teacher for many years, I rarely talked about the civil rights movement, mainly because most of the history I taught was from the days of exploration up until maybe 1865. Finally, one day, another teacher who knew me outside of school invited me to speak to his class, because I felt reticent about speaking to my own classes about something so personal. But he invited me to talk, and he did some lessons in preparation for my visit, and he did teach U.S. history from 1865 up until the present. So that was my initiation into talking about freedom rides. I mean, before that, I mainly talked just to individuals that I happened to know, but I had not spoken publicly, except for one event. Soon after I got out of jail in Mississippi, CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, asked me to speak in suburban communities outside of Chicago. They were doing fundraising, and I did do a few of those talks, but mostly it was just a personal thing. It wasn't a public thing. But I think now we need to get the news out that there were people who stood up and came to bat, and maybe we didn't all do our share, but we did something. And we were able to lead fairly conventional lives. We left those lives behind us to go to places where none of us had ever been before. We'd never been to jail. We couldn't even imagine going to jail. And yet we were able, the events of the early freedom rides sparked the rest of us to give up our comfortable lives of going to see foreign films and meeting at the co-op, at the food co-op. So we were able to get out and do some things. These were just beyond our comprehension. To me, the idea of going to jail was a disgrace. I mean, if a police car even stopped in front of your house, you were mortified because you assumed that your neighbors thought you'd done something horrible. And so the idea of actually being in prison was pretty awesome for us. But we overcame that to do what we thought was right.
Gaja, who was a Yale divinity student at the time, currently resides in Princeton. And as we went through the book, we began to realize we had a number of New Haven connections. And it fit perfectly with the idea and concept of bringing those other communities together. So the Divinity School is looking at this as well and thinking about ways that they might become engaged and do a project. Reverend Reginald Green, who's coming up from DC, is an African-American freedom rider. We're going to give the Divinity School access to him if they can pull something together quick enough. If not, they can do a project at a later, at a later date. So the idea is to look at the library as a model, look at what the library is pulling together in a very short time, basically from August to October, that the whole projects, that these really 3 projects were pulled together, which is the fundraiser on the 29th in the morning, the open public forum in the library that evening on the 29th, and then the Selma exhibit. So they did that basically in less than 60 days. And then to use that as a model for other activities that everyone else might think of, independent of the library. So are there any questions or any thoughts you can between those?